So I have a million and one fucking questions. I'm not texting people. I'm writing this shit down so I don't forget it.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm
Um,
boring you.
hell no, bro, dude. I love this shit. We're 40 minutes in, and I'm gonna until you're saying you're gonna have to tell me like, hey, Mike, let's fucking cut it. Um, and also for those of you that don't know, Cam and I know each other since Cam was in high school.
I was gonna
So
say,
like,
at what
right?
point
Like,
were we
were
gonna
you a
talk about
junior or a
that?
senior in high school?
Junior. Yep. So I remember the first day walking into DeFranco's just to check it out. Just wide eyed, had no idea what was going on. 165 pounds. I don't know if you remember how skinny I was. And you were at the desk, the front desk there, because I was going there to talk to Joe. And you were at the desk. I remember saying to Joe, "Is this the guy that jumped 54 inches under the box?" Yeah, like I was, "Is this the box jumping guy?" Like I had already been looking into it. I was just like trying to get my mind right for if I end up training here, I better be ready to go. These guys are serious. And so it's hilarious to think back on, 17-year-old me. And that was the first time I ever saw you in my life was that day, asking if you were the box jump guy.
Dude, and I mean, time just fucking flies. It's why, and you know, it's like, where does it go? Because I've had my own gym now
Yeah.
for 10 years. You know what I mean? Like we're coming. So like, and that means I haven't seen you. When did you leave DeFranco's? 5 years ago? 4 years ago? I don't even know.
2020. Yeah. 2020 is when
Four,
I
4 years
fully,
ago.
fully left. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
dude. Like, fuck. It's just
I know.
time. It just and we never fucking talk. So like, for those of you listening, like Cam and I hadn't really we weren't really able to sync up until what 2-3 weeks ago, and then we were on the phone for 2 hours, and then
Yeah.
prior to that, we were on. It was maybe a year ago. I called you up asking you a speed question, and you were like, "No, I agree with you," and I was like, "Motherfucker!" And we were on the phone for like an hour there too. And it's just like few and far between. But that's why I have so many questions for you. Um, so it's interesting. I do the high low, or think in terms of high low. You're doing that with the extensive intensive work, and I watched this series from Altus, Reengineering Sue,
Hmm.
with Randy
I haven't
Huntington.
seen it yet, but I can't wait to dive into it.
Bro, it's awesome. It's
Yeah.
it's awesome. The guy's a genius. I recommend it all the time. And just so everyone's listening, like the amount of times that I've posted about it and I've tagged Altus and I've tagged Stu McMillan, I don't make a dime off it. I don't make a dime off it. Like I love it that much, and I love Randy Huntington stuff so much. It's awesome, and I recommend everyone buy it and watch it. Literally, I've watched it probably 10 times already. And I learned something every single time. And I mean, you watch it, and Randy Huntington during high intensity times, they don't move weights slowly there. Like nothing they do is slow
Yeah.
ever. They're doing sprinting. Then the next day they're doing resistance training, which is going to be fast. And they don't do like stupid upper body stuff for no reason. Like there's no pump days in high performance sprinting. Like they're getting after
Imagine how good he would be if they did put that stuff.
it. And then they do six. They do six resistance training days in a row where it's either sprinting or weights and
Mhm.
sprinting and weights and sprinting, 6 in a row. And
Yeah.
these are high velocity. And I remember looking at one of Rolf's programs for one of his Olympic guys, for sprinting, and I was like, you can do this back to back. I can't do this with my football guys.
Mhm.
I just can't. Like my pro guys, and they don't move at these velocities. I don't know how they do this, but it's like sometimes I think maybe we're training pussies. We're training them to be so soft and so fragile. Because like also Thursday in the NFL, Wednesday, Thursday, they have back-to-back motherfucking days. And that's after a game on Sunday. So they have Sunday, then they come in Monday, then they have Tuesday off, then Wednesday, Thursday, they hit it. Friday, it's like less, and then Saturday walkthrough, maybe Friday walkthrough, and then Saturday travel and walkthrough day. And then they hit it again. So they'll have 3 or 4 high intensity days in a week, and 2 of them are back to back in the NFL. And here we are in training, like, oh, I don't know, you did hard 20s yesterday. Maybe we shouldn't do, high velocity movements today. So
Mhm.
it's so it's so cool how little I know.
Yeah.
Like it's so humbling just seeing all these perspectives from all these guys. But so one question that I have with you. and this was about your coach, and you're like, oh, we really don't tell the skill coaches what to do. But skill coaches aren't that educated in landing mechanics, running mechanics. They're good with route running. They're good with tactical side of things, right? Like that's their expertise. But the technique, from a general or from a specific sprint standpoint and a specific football standpoint, but not a general movement standpoint, it's like they don't always coincide,
Mhm.
right? So do you guys ever come in and be like, hey, Johnny, or number 72, get the whole foot down when you're making that cut, or hey, don't let that head lean left when you're trying to go right, or doing this? Do you guys, do you have the leeway to go in and make those adjustments as you see fit?
We will not. We won't step into that while practice is going on
How
because,
come?
because a lot of it is for these guys in college. Most of the time, the biggest low hanging fruit for them to perform better in what we're doing is they need to know what the hell they're doing, like just tactically. Tactically, they need to know how to line up and where to go next. I mean, you'd be shocked at how many high level high school guys don't understand the game when they get here. It's just
Mhm.
unless they go to a really good high school that taught them all of that, which you have plenty of those in the South as well. But there are people that they just got by with physicality. They no technique, no tactical awareness. Just I am bigger than you, faster than you, stronger than you, and you cannot stop me physically because you're just a puny high school kid and I am a 5-star recruit. So when they're in practice, a lot of the times we don't want to give them, it's paralysis by analysis sort of thing.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
for us, the way Dom operates, and I'm the same way, is where instead of being so overt about things, where I'm stepping in and I'm intervening, I'm being overt about it. Where can I treat it almost like the movie Inception, where I'm now putting this seed in there where you don't even know it's there? And I think that's what I respect a lot about people like Altus and what they're doing, Stu and Dan, and how they try to find ways to just get the system to understand what it's supposed to do through training design and activity
Mhm.
design. And a lot of that is skill acquisition research and all of that. And so it's really fascinating stuff. But I think that where what's cool here is that because the coaches are allowed to be around more, the football coaches, the technical tactical coaches, when we do things like our team runs, we address some of those things. We basically break our team runs up into 3 primary parts. And one is just a very general warm up, which is essentially just ground based mobility, heart rate elevation. That's pretty much it. Then we're breaking them up into these GPP stations where we have a coach at each station. We have 5 coaches. And so we have 5 stations. And at each station, we're just doing something different. This could be a change of direction oriented station. This could be some type of elastic endurance station. This is more of a true jump training, whatever. It could be anything you can think of. We did like rolls and crawls and things like that at another station this summer. And so it's just GPP, all different kinds, multi-directional, ground-based. I'm on my feet, I'm upright, different velocities, all of that. And in moments like that, it's pretty cool because the coaches come with their position groups. They're not doing anything. They're not coaching. They're just sort of following them around to what we're doing. And so they hear us say everything to them. And so I had a certain change of direction station this summer where I'm talking about the biomechanics of changing direction or just making a cut. That's basically all it was one day it was how to make a 45-degree cut back downhill. Another one is how to make a 90-degree cut on the other day. And we basically had a progression of that all summer. And it was that simple. You're cutting this angle one day, you're cutting this angle another day. And so the coaches all got to hear me explain to them what we're looking for when we're trying to teach them how to cut. Exactly what you're saying, how the foot's hitting the ground, how I'm pushing the ground away, how I'm repositioning and creating separation instead of what my friend Tony Villani calls fast foot replace, or I'm taking like 2 to 3 steps and I went nowhere. Like just learning how to actually manipulate space and in 3 steps can actually gain like 5 yards and create separation instead of going nowhere, like the quick foot nonsense and all that. So it's cool because now the coaches hear us saying stuff. And what I've seen as a result of that is that coaches have actually come in and they've grabbed Dom because he's sort of their point person with all this stuff. Hey, what were you guys teaching at that one station? Like, what kind of, like, I've seen like our coach who teaches our pass rushers come in and ask him like what kind of stance they should be in, what's biomechanically more advantageous. And it was the same thing same thing when I was at Indiana. Our coaches did the same thing with us. They would come down and just ask us about, okay, if I'm telling them to do this, does that make sense biomechanically? So in my experience, and I haven't been everywhere, obviously, but the places I have been, all the old complaints about like coaches don't care about this stuff, they don't want to know about it. It hasn't been the case where I've been. There's some that are certainly that way, but there are a good handful that are trying to understand their position better and just movement. So if I'm teaching this guy to do this, is that a problem? Like the false step is a big thing that coaches talk about. Like Lee Taft would call it the plyo step. They see it as a false step, as a bad thing. I literally had a coach come to me at Indiana and say, the plyo or this false step, I feel like when I'm watching tape of guys in the NFL, there's a lot of guys who false step and they operate just fine. And we sat down with Wellman. Aaron Wellman was there, and we talked to him about it and how there's research to show that sometimes it's faster to do that because you've actually repositioned your hips and your body in a better, more advantageous position to now accelerate rather than this awkward, I don't want to false step and now I'm pushing weirdly. So it was just interesting how he noticed where he's like, I've been teaching not to false step this whole time, but all I do is watch the NFL every Sunday, put on tape, and guys are false stepping left and right to reposition their body in a better position from which to accelerate and get to the ball. So they care about it. But to me, it's all, I don't have an answer for it. Everybody wants to know, like, how do you talk to the coaches? To me, it's got to be organic. It just has to be. And more often than not, if you're going to go ask somebody about what they do, they want to talk about it. And then it can naturally turn into, okay, so then what do you do? And that's been my experience is that. So it's not going to be that way with everybody. I think some guys are going to be narcissistic and not want to hear anything you have to say. And there's other people that are almost too open and, maybe they don't ever have any true opinions on any things and everybody in between. But it's, I think coaches deserve a little bit more credit from my experience.
That's nice to hear.
I like that.
There's not many people in other sports or even in American football either that could say the same.
I can only speak from my experience. So I don't know. Yeah.
So now, first step. So Tony Villani, first step is everything, right? First step is absolutely everything. First, second step, you get that one step and he says you're 20 yards away before you actually catch someone. If that person is 0.2 faster than you. What are you doing to track and improve first step? How are you doing that? What is your way to really, like, this is what we got to do outside of reaction time, outside of perception, right? Like game speed, obviously, like that's the first step is, am I reading this? But from an objective standpoint, completely away from the game, what are you doing? How are you improving that first step?
I don't have a great answer for you because I haven't really taken the time to dive into that the way that you asked me about. Like when we talked about that off air and you texted me about it, and I had to go back in the computer and find the actual data, like for the takeoff velocity on the first and second step for you. When I went back and looked at what our guys were doing, I haven't. There's almost so many other issues I've seen, global issues with our sprinting, in shapes and trying to keep guys healthy and just building certain capacities from a general standpoint that are not in a great place in terms of biomotor abilities, that I just haven't taken the time to really funnel it down to that very first step, where I'm measuring it, monitoring it, and seeing if I've actually made change there. So I don't have a really good answer for you, but I do notice that is its own skill, is just the sheer ability to start, just to explode out of the cannon, and how it's, even from a general standpoint, like systematic standpoint, we, for the first time, actually did some box squats this summer. And on one of the days we did it with bands and we did a true dynamic effort day where we said to them, I want you to control it down in the box. fully pause, and explode off the box. That ability to fully pause and explode off the box was just, guys were like, how do I do this? This is just such a hard thing for my system to do right now. And they figured it out as the summer went on. But that to me is related to what you're saying, right? You're talking about just starting from static, from nothing and just going. And so that's where I'm talking about how I want to better understand the nervous system and how to improve that. Like Franz Bosch will talk about muscle slack. How can I get the system to reduce slack as fast as possible so that the actual contractile elements can now shorten and I can actually move? Like what's the electromechanical delay? How do I shorten that? All of that stuff is fascinating to me. And I would probably defer to one of you two to hear about how you guys are going about doing it. But it's absolutely its own unique skill that needs development for sure.
For me, it's quite easy because I'm training mostly hockey guys. So for them, they all run like penguins usually. So just trying to clear up some basic stuff with them, following light resisted sprints, unweighted sprints, a little bit of top speed work, not too much because their hamstrings are so underdeveloped usually. And just then running technique for them is just, I'm always worried about their ankles. They have chocolate ankles most of the time. So yeah, for me, it doesn't need to get too complex with these guys. They improve in the off season and then they're into 3 or 4 games a week. So they end up detrained by the time off season comes back around.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting that you talked about the box squat with the pause, because man, I can box squat the house to this day. Like I haven't put a bar on my back, and I'm quite certain I'll box squat 405 for 20 if I really motherfucked myself. You know what I mean? Like, because I mean, you and I grew up on that shit. Like
Yep.
that's just who we. I mean, that's what we did to DeFrancos. It's who we are.
Yep.
You asked me to free squat, man.
Same.
I don't think I could free squat 315. Like even when I was my strongest, like ass to grass free squat, you know how Moser used to do? I can't do that.
Mhm.
Can't do that. I right now, I don't think I'd be able to do that with 225. And my reactive elastic qualities are substantially lacking, and I think a lot of it has to do with how we trained. However, you saw my motherfucking box squat, box jump and box squat. You know what I mean? Like my first and second step, my 10 yards, I was running consistent 1.6s with the DeFranco timing. I was faster than Kush with a lot of that stuff back then.
Mhm.
I was keeping up, and I think at one point I ran a low 4.5, high 4.4 hand time, and I ran a 6.5 60. So my reactive elastic qualities were, but I couldn't depth jump for shit. The
Mhm.
only way I could dunk was a two-handed off, standing underneath the basketball hoop. I couldn't run and dunk. I don't know. I definitely think that the box squat is awesome for the first step, 2 steps, but after that, I think it destroyed my reactive elastic qualities. What do you think of that?
Well, you know how I feel about it because we talked about it on the phone not too long ago. But yeah, it's something that Boo Schexnayder said a long time ago. And when I spoke to him about it in person and through Zoom calls, it's really interesting when you talk about really fast people and how much they need that reactivity and that elasticity. And I don't think it's any one exercise in terms of lifting that is going to negatively impact that. I think it's the sheer overemphasis of lifting in general that can potentially negatively impact some of those qualities. And it's not my opinion, because I've been very resistant to want to believe this. But the more I look into track and field or people who deal with the fastest people, there are breadcrumbs that say that like they're just not lifting them heavy all the time. And to your point on the phone when we spoke, they will feature aspects of it. It's not that they never do it. It will be featured in there. but it's not a cornerstone of the whole program, where the rest of it is being driven by more explosive activities. Like Boo is a good example, where really his weights program is driven through the Olympic lift variations. It's not through the strength powerlifting type methodologies. He knows if his more explosive ballistic type activities in the weight room are trending in the right direction, then he's getting what he wants, which is essentially a base of power, more so than a base of just pure grunt, heavy, slow strength. And the way he put it was best, I thought, was when he said if he's got a novice athlete, they might do heavy strength training. When I say heavy, the context I always think of is greater than or equal to 85% 1RM and just living there, right? And so, or less than 0.5 meters per second average velocity if you're a velocity-based person. And so he'll take a novice athlete and keep them in that range of going that heavy for maybe 4 months, where they're building strength, right? And it's something I think almost all of us have gone through as novices when we first entered some kind of organized training. But when he has these elite level sprinters and jumpers, he said we might do it for 4 sessions, 4 total sessions. And the rest of the time I'm driving Olympic lifts, I'm keeping it sub max, I'm going really explosive with it. He had a great point about, you could take somebody who is weight trained for 10 years, but has never done a depth jump in their life, and they do a full depth jump plyometric type workout, they will be sore as hell the next day, because now it's a certain form of tension and recruitment that they've just never been asked to do, because it's so unique to the slow strength type of activities. And so it's just, when I hear him say stuff like that, it just makes my brain, like, my wheels start going, because I'm thinking to myself, training is not just lifting, and if we scale it all the way out, if we scale it all the way out to what we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, like the game itself, it's a training dose from which you get a response. Like the body doesn't know. It's doing stuff. It's participating in activity. And so it's got to adapt to that. And so for us to think about it as like everything's just lifting. So to your point, to go all the way back, I don't think it's box squats. I just think we were probably just lifting heavy too often or for too long, instead of building some of the more explosive qualities that we talked about. And I noticed with our guys this summer, we had basically 2 box squat days. One was more, we're pushing the weight a little bit. And the other day was a true dynamic effort, like I talked about before, where we're trying to go really, really explosive, above 0.8 meters per second average velocity all the time, really chasing closer to 1.0. And we put bands on there and everything. When we had that day that we were doing the dynamic effort work, our skill guys, like our receivers, our DBs who hate the weight room, they want nothing to do with it, they loved that day. They loved it. They were like, I'll lift weights like this all the time. And when we do trap bar jumps or just any kind of squat jump, they love that too. They're like, I'll lift weights like this too, because they feel themselves doing something a little bit more explosive, a little bit more athletic. It speaks to them a little bit more. That's my theory, at least. That's just from what I've observed and just the feedback I hear. But when you ask them to strain and grind, these really reactive, wired guys, they hate it. It's just so not them. It's just not what they do. And they hate it. With every fiber of their being, they hate it.
This Rolf's favorite word is the grind. He can't stand it. If he sees anything going slow, he's like just shaking his head all the time. When you saw the training program, Mike, for the Olympian, what did you notice what was the first thing you noticed?
With what Olympian?
You said that you saw Rolf's, one of his training programs.
The frequency.
Yeah.
The density and frequency. Like how much, like I was like, Rolf, what the fuck are you doing? As if to like criticize him. You know what I mean? Like it was blasphemous to me. Like, well, this. And Rolf loves Charlie, but like, he's like, no, mate, you can do this. Like, I was like, this is Rolf. I can't, I was like disgusted with how dense and frequent some of the training was. And he's like, yeah, he doesn't do much recovery with them because he's in Australia and he's in Sweden. So like what are they going to do for recovery? What can Rolf monitor? and the guy just keeps progressing and progressing and progressing. Like that to me was, and I go back to the Goggins quotes where it's like Goggins ran 60 miles and he had to run 100 miles in 24 hours. And he was like 12 hours in, ran 60 miles, and he already shit himself and started pissing blood, and he felt like both his legs were broke at that point. And he had so many blisters on his body, and all he brought was like Myoplex and like protein bars or some shit like that. Right? Like what an idiot. But then he went and ran when he had nothing left, he ran 40 more miles. So it's like we're not as fragile as we think we are. And I mean, even me with the body work, and I am, me after most sets, like, how you feel? How'd that feel? What do you feel like? What, where are we going with this? Yeah, better, worse, same, like all this type of stuff. With all my constant check-ins. And I think like maybe sometimes we're just crippling these guys with our quote unquote knowledge of recovery and training load and load management and all this stuff. Like at some point, maybe you just got to go out there and kick some fucking ass. Like I don't know. When I look at these guys, these high performance guys, and obviously like they do a lot, like they focus. I mean, when you're in China, like what's your job? Your job is to be the Olympian. So like you have all this stuff at your disposal. And when you're in college, like what's your job? Well, my job is to go and try to bang chicks, like, oh, and I play football, so it's like it's way different. Like that's these guys are burning the candle at both ends on one side, in the high performance, they're really caring. So I don't know. It's the more I learn, the less I know, the more frustrated I become, and the more hands off I get with stuff. But then the deeper in the weeds that I dive with other things. It's like with the acupuncture too. I'm very simplistic with my approach to needling now. Super, super simplistic. When I was going to acupuncture school, I had no idea what I was doing. No idea. So I'm sitting here and I'm opening it up and I'm trying to understand every little bit of it. And then, it's like the Dunning-Kruger effect, where it's like, oh, just enough that like I don't realize how little I know. And I came up with this whole treatment strategy for certain things that was perfect and brilliant. And I put it by a couple of people that know acupuncture, like, oh yeah, that's good. Man, I haven't fucking done that. You know what I mean? Like the years later, 5 years, 6 years later, I think about that. I was like, man, that's fucking stupid. Like they don't need that. That's just way too much shit. And now it's very simplistic in my approach. Whether it's and it doesn't have to be that complicated with what I do with acupuncture. So the more you know, the less you do, but the more it means. Like I had someone in one of my programs the other day, and they asked me a question, and I went on like and he asked me an in-depth question. I went on a 10-minute lecture as to why we do what and what. He goes, man, I didn't think there was that much going into the fact that you had us do some push-ups and pull-ups. You know what I mean? Like, but it's like, these are all the things that I'm considering with it. So I want to bring it back a little bit to when I trained you, Cam. And you made a comment that has stuck with me for years. Now, I think that what we did was awesome for you, and I think you got great results. And I think you thought that too, where we had taken a step back from lifting heavy. And I think we didn't squat heavier than 315 that summer. And your PR prior was like a 460 squat. And then you went to school and you PR'd like at like, I don't know, 500 or 525 or some shit like that. Like I'm not making those numbers up. That sounds right, right?
Yeah, I think it was 500.
Yeah. 500. Mm-hmm. Cool. And as we were training and you're like, yo, this is cool. This is weird. I can't believe this is working. But you made a comment to me and it stuck with me forever. It was, there's something about training with Joe. His guys have an air about them. Like, even though you got stronger and you got faster and you got stronger and faster than when you had done in the past, there was some confidence that you were lacking. And it was like, I don't know. I don't have it. I don't have that moxie. I don't have that charisma that those guys training there had. And I mean, we know Joe, he's got a presence, like the guru has entered the room. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter what it is. He walks in and it's like, yo, that's the fucking dude. So I think about that all the time. And I know now the confidence that I bring to my guys now, like I walk into the room and they trust what I have to say as long as I've earned their trust, right? Like everyone knows that in my gym, like, yes, I'll get better doing this. He trains the pros, he does this, he does that. What do you do? By the way, do you remember that comment?
Yeah, I haven't thought about that forever until you brought that up, but I just went back in my head and I remember.
Dude, I remember the garage doors were open. We were on the turf and you made that comment. We were looking over there. I was like, I get it. I fucking get it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I totally get that feeling. And there's something to that. Just training like a motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what do you do with your guys to get that feeling?
So here's what I'll say about from day one with Joe, that when I think back on all of us training with him, I just get so much nostalgia about it, because I was like foaming at the mouth in history class, just waiting to go to DeFranco's later that day. Like it was, I don't know. I can't even put my finger on what he did. It's almost like he just like let the dogs just kind of get each other motivated. Like he didn't do a lot necessarily himself, but he had compiled so much testosterone in one room that it was like, I remember like even thinking about trying to rack the bar after doing one less rep than I expected. And it was like either you or Markowski or somebody behind me just like slapping me on the back, like, get your last damn rep. Like it was just, I got to get this rep, like it was just, or pushing the prowler and thinking like, I can't do another prowler suicide. Like there's no, and somebody's saying to you like, no, dude, like you're going to go and do it. Like, it's just, it is what it is. It's what we do around here, And so just remember what that did for me as a teenager. Like just the confidence that it built in me as a teenager, just be around guys who are like, we're here to get you better. And if you want to get better, you're either with us or you're not. So, and if you ain't with us, you don't want to get better. I mean, it is what it is. And so, and he did a really good job of doing enough of like, just here's the record board. Here's oh, you're going to jump higher than Kush this week. He did enough of that where we were almost competitive against ourselves, but really competitive with each other too. And it was just fun. Like it was just so much fun. And so I went back and actually read Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers again. I always read that book over and over, because sometimes I'm like, I just go back and I'm like, I need to understand stress again and again and again, because I never fully feel like I really understand it or what it's doing to my body. And he has an excerpt in there about how exercise is really, really good for stress reduction, only when you enjoy it. Like if you, you know what I mean? Like if you don't enjoy it, if it's not fun for you, it actually causes a worse stress response from a psychological standpoint. And in his mind, there's no separation between psychology and biology, because if I have a psychological response to it, that means my body is doing something biologically. And so all I'm doing is harming my body if I'm just forcing myself to work out when I'm just not connecting with it. Because even a psycho like Goggins, he's connecting with the psychotic things that he does. That's why it works for him. Like he gets off on the fact that he's just not this soft dude. You know what I mean? That he's just this tough bastard. He gets off on that. And so that's what it drives him. It motivates him to keep going. And so I think that Joe just brought that to the table for us. And so thinking back on how much fun I had training during those years, I'm like, man, I need to bring that to my guys in college. And college historically is very much do what I say. I'm a dictator. I don't care how you're feeling. It's just about doing the work, where it doesn't have to be that way. And you can get really good work if you can be demanding without being demeaning. Does that make sense? So I can demand a lot of you, but I can fire you up about it. and I can get you really excited to go do that thing. And I think that when I was training with you at the time, you were relatively young to training, and I've made the same mistakes as a young coach too, in terms of just all the mistakes we make as young coaches. And I think what might have been different initially with you is that you did a really good job educating me about how to keep myself healthy. But I wonder if there was like an unintended subconscious thing in my mind of like, oh, I got to make sure I'm healthy all the time. Like I can't just go out and really give it all my all because is my CNS okay? Am I in the right place? Am I going too hard on a low day? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like, all that stuff. So the education was phenomenal. Like I'll credit you for turning me onto all of the resources that built my foundational base of knowledge. And Brooker and I went through that together as interns and discussing that when we were both studying with you. So, I mean, you taught us so much of what to look for. And I think that where Joe was in his career at that time was Joe was done with that. And he's like, let's just train and get after it and just like get results and have a good time and just get a bunch of competitive dudes in the room and let's drive this thing. Let's let this ship steer itself. And where I'm at my age now, I'm trying to do that. Like I want to bring that energy where like I know I can hold it in my heart to know what I'm attempting to do, at least like what my intentions are with this program and the dosages that I'm implementing. And I know in my head it's a low day or an extensive day. I don't want you to know that. You know what I mean? I want you to give me all you got in this team run. But I know by design, the session's extensive. Like you can't operate at your max intensity because I'm not allowing you to have enough rest to do that. But your effort can still be 100%, even if your actual output is like 75%. So, and you can have a lot of fun doing it. Or I can stay on you and stay demanding on you and talk all kinds of smack with you and do all that. And so I think that's what Joe, I think, was doing better than anybody in the early 2000s was that. And why we saw so much gains and why, I mean, I look at what we all looked like, you know what I'm saying? Like at 16 to 18 years old, like what we looked like compared to like your average 16 to 18-year-old. And I'm like, holy, he was doing something right. Like,
that's true. But it was infectious. This energy was infectious enough that worldwide it was having the same impact on people.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Even just with the blog posts and the little videos that were coming out, he did a great job.
He would do like if people criticized him, he would put a picture of all the dudes in his gym like with chains on their neck and just flexing like this. And he's like, yeah, you know where to find us if you really have a problem. Just, you know what I mean? Like it was just cool. Like it was just a cool place to be at the time where it's like, well, we got this certain swagger about us that dudes are wearing DeFranco shirts. Like proud to wear that to freaking Muscle Maker Grill or something like that. Like it's weird. It's crazy to think about just the excitement behind that brand because it's like, like I've got an Altis shirt and I'm not going to be like, I can't wait to put that shirt on. Wear it. And I love those guys. They've done so much for me, but it's like there was something about that freaking little barbell guy doing an exercise that none of us have ever heard of, and it was just cool. I don't know. There was a certain swagger about it. So in my mind, I'm like, how can I do that for my athletes? Like whatever Joe was doing for us, it's a great point.
Try to make it an extraordinary experience for them. I mean, a lot of these guys going through this program, these are going to be the good old days that they're going to be talking about, like, always reminiscing on this time. So I think if you just go in with that intention of making every day extraordinary, bro, you're going to have a massive impact on them. Absolutely.
Yeah. One of our jobs, and we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. And it's a lesson that I've learned and I keep having to fucking learn over and over and over again, is our job as coaches or teachers, educators, whatever the hell we are. It's not to tell these guys what to do. It's to put them in situations so they can realize what they have to do. Mm-hmm. And we don't, like what is our, like for running, am I supposed to say, get your arms up, or am I supposed to give you an arm drill? Am I supposed to say push back more, or am I supposed to hook you up to a sled? Am I supposed to say, get your knees up? Or are we supposed to do running A's? Are we supposed to do wickets? Or like, how am I going to give you a drill to help you get in the position that I want you to be in without having to say a fucking word? And that's our job. So, I mean, bro, I'll never forget. I tore my shoulder my senior year of college, and I was so depressed. Like I made the throw, and I felt the pins and needles, and I was like, holy shit, like I did something wrong. And every time I swung and missed, I dislocated my shoulder. And I felt like the pop, 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 pop. I was like, oh no, this is bad. So I got the MRI, shit's fucked up, everything's torn. And I remember Joe was training a couple of the it was March. Joe was training a couple of the combine guys or the NFL guys. And we went to Overtime Sports, and he was doing his 40 stuff there, and I walked in, I was like sulking, but like I wasn't like a total pussy, but I was wearing it. And I said to Joe, I was like, he said, what's wrong, asshole? And I was
Which was
like,
your name? He wasn't calling that was just his name for you. Yeah.
and you used to be able to Google that. I had to get that removed. I had to contact dozens of websites to get that shit taken down. Used to be able to type Mike the asshole into Google and I'd show up. But I remember he was like, what's up, asshole? You look a little down. And I was like, dude, my shoulder, I got back from the doctor. I fucking tore it. He looked at me and goes, you gonna be a pussy? Or, you're gonna keep sitting here fucking crying? Why are you fucking here? Like as if like I went there for sympathy, like for a fucking hug, like, oh, I'm so sorry. He goes, so what are you gonna fucking do? Like, okay. I don't
What's
as if like, don't bring that fucking pussy energy over here, bro. Like, we're here to fucking get. And I was like, oh, he's fucking right. So the doctor's like, so when are we doing surgery? I was like, I'm not doing surgery. He's like, what? I was like, yeah. He said, every time you swing and miss, you dislocate. I said, well, I'm just not going to fucking swing and miss. So I played the rest of the season like that, bro. One arm. I didn't give a shit. And then afterwards, I went in for surgery. The doctor's like, this is not what was on the MRI. This is way worse. Yeah, bro. Like it was like West Side, did you see the West Side documentary?
Yeah. I saw it.
Yeah. Like, bro, that's except like, I mean, Joe didn't kick us out. Like, but dude, we were there to fucking work hard. There was nothing else to it. That's all there was to it. And like, bro, full circle, sometimes just go kick ass. Just get after it. Like, what? All the science, all the mumbo jumbo shit, we don't understand half the metrics anyway. And to be honest with you, they could all be fucking wrong, because this data could just be not updating properly, and all these metrics could be completely off. Like, we could be lied to by Apple, by everyone. They could just be making shit up and just keeping it consistent. Like, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's like at a certain point, you really have to make a decision if it's for you or not, to be somebody who's participating in the sport you claim you want to participate in. I mean, so I use our team runs as my opportunity to psychologically test our guys too, because it's an endurance day. And so I hated endurance. It was nothing I'd ever wanted to do. I wanted to do something really intense and take 5 minutes and do it again. I didn't want to just keep going. I've never been good at that naturally, and it makes me really uncomfortable. But I remember in high school, because I'm looking in the chat box, and Dougie wrote throwing up was a badge of honor at DeFranco's back. And
those are my notes for later.
And I literally think back on how there was a while with the Prowler where I just couldn't do it without throwing up. Like, I just couldn't. And
conditioned yourself.
Yeah.
Just a picture of it making you queasy.
That's what it was, because I had no concept of how to deal with lactate buildup at all. And
do you remember that session we did together where I was just sitting there in my underwear puking?
Yeah, I probably blacked that out. I probably try not to. I mean, But like you're naming one of 100 sessions that happened at DeFranco's. So, but when I think about how I brought one of my high school teammates with me to see if he wanted to train at DeFranco's, and this was at a time where I had made up my mind. I'm playing in college. I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure it out. Joe's going to help me get there. I'm going to do whatever he tells me to do. I'm just going to get there by any means necessary. I knew I wanted it more than anything. And I brought a high school teammate of mine, and I said to Joe, I'm like, hey, he wants to watch the session. You mind if he watches the session? He wants to see if he wants to train here. And Joe's like, yeah, Joe was like, yeah, sure. Like, he could watch it. I don't care. So the dude's watching the whole session. And at the very end, Joe says, your finisher today is Prowler Suicides on the blacktop outside. And it was in the middle of the summer. So it was hot, New Jersey humidity, all of that. And so whatever it was, like 5 back, 10 back, 15 back I don't remember what the reps were. But I got through all the reps and I'm tasting sand. Like I've got no saliva left. I'm dying. I'm trying to hydrate. It's doing nothing for me. You remember how there was like a slight slope out there of blacktop? So I lie
on the way up.
Yeah. So I lie down on the slope and all of a sudden it just starts raining. And so it's pouring on me. And I look over my right shoulder and I just like I throw it everywhere. And I was done. I made it through the workout, but I was just out there and I threw up like a dinosaur, like over and over again. And my high school teammate is in the doorway of the garage door, the slide up door, just watching me do this. And he says nothing. We get back in my car. As soon as he closes his door, he's like, yeah, I ain't training here. Like he decided in that moment, he didn't want it. He just didn't want to do it. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you got to make that decision for yourself. Like how bad do you want it? So when we're in our team runs and our dudes are starting to feel tired and heavy and they're heavy breathing and all that kind of stuff, I'm literally like between rest intervals, I'm like, why are you here? Like what, like who's making you do this? What, like, do you really want it? Like I'm questioning it just to psychologically challenge them to say like, how bad do I want this? Like, do I really want to keep going through this? Because guess what? It's going to be like this every week for the next 4 to 6 years or however long you're in college, 3 to 6 years. I mean, it never ends. Just so you know, this discomfort, it never ends. And ask any high level athlete, the discomfort associated with just training for high performance, it never ends. So you got to decide if it's for you. Like if you really want to do that, or if you just want to go to college. And there's nothing wrong with that. Go to college if you want to do that. Go get a regular job. Like nobody's going to hold back for you. But if you're telling me you want to be the best or one of the best, like you got to understand what that takes, you know what I mean? And what that pertains. So it's always a good psychological test, I think, for me in those moments.
And for those of you listening right now, number one, we paid to go through this. Like we paid for this fucking torture. But number two, Cam worked at Dunkin' Donuts up the street to be able to afford to get the fuck beat out of him. Like this is just what, like this is what it takes. Like you need to sacrifice, and then you have to sacrifice in order to have the privilege to go through pain. Like that's what this is. I have a poster on my wall in the gym. It's a picture of Hogan when he was playing the Steelers, and he has like I think he had like 3 touchdowns that game. He has like the all-time playoff record for receivers for the Patriots, which is like pretty sick, of yards and I think touchdowns in a game. And that was he went off the Steelers that year. And at the top of it says commitment, and at the bottom it says, are you willing? And that's a serious question that all my guys have to ask themselves. Like, what it's going to take to be great is commitment. Are you willing to do this? And I had one of my guys. So yesterday, I had to show my guys how to do some drills, some running drills. So I had to like warm up, and I had to do some hill sprints with them. And I played rabbit when they were trying to chase me, and I was beating them in races. And college linebacker and a future NFL tight end, and I was beating them in races. Like, what the hell? Like, Mike, like with all due respect, like how did an unathletic short Italian kid get so explosive and athletic? And I sat down. I said, bro, I don't think you understand what it is to really try to be great. Like I got cut and then I became All-American. You know, like it's a sickness that you have to put yourself through in order to really, like, if you really fucking want this, bro. I didn't get drunk until I turned 21, and my friends forced me to, and I could count on one hand how many times I've been drunk. I was drunk in college. I used to bring protein shakes to parties. I weighed my food, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks every single day. I used to like wake up at 4:30 with a pre-made protein shake at my bed, chug it, and go back to sleep. I started getting acid reflux. I didn't know. Oh, I don't know why this was happening. I'd be vomiting up like acid in my sleep. I had no idea. But like, it's yeah. Brooker's laughing. Like this is
Yeah.
what are you willing to fucking do? Brooker, in order to feel like he had to accomplish everything he wanted to be a great coach, he slept on the floor. Remember the shithole he slept in, Cam?
The Palace.
The Palace. You remember that?
Which is
He went across
sarcastic, so
country.
people understand. That's sarcastic as you can get.
Bed bugs and crackheads inside.
I slept in the Palace for a night at least.
Yeah.
I do
But
remember.
like, how old were you? You were 20 years old. You weren't even 21.
Yeah. Well, I think I was actually 19.
I remember we had to
We
sneak
were
it in
young.
bars.
Yeah, we were young.
Yeah.
I picked him
And-
up from the train station when he first.
That's right. Of
Yeah,
course.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
we were-
remember being in your family home too.
I brought him to my mom's house.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of that. But yeah, exactly.
But
He
we
went
lived-
across,
we
went
lived
across the
through
country, across the world to do this. You know what I mean? Like, and in order to intern, to go to DeFranco's for free, live in a shithole with no air conditioning, no nothing, and sleep on a mattress on the floor. Like, bro, this is what it fucking takes. Like, are you willing? And these guys don't want to do a sprint when they got NIL money and they, you know, like what are we talking about? Like, how bad do you want it? You know?
It's funny because I think about like some of like the sauna protocols or cold water immersion protocols, and there are certain examples like that where they make you healthier, you know, and like there's documented research based health benefits that can come from discomfort. And so there's a certain sense of like a certain level of discomfort. It positively impacts you as a human organism, you know, and it's fascinating because like Aaron Wellman used to say, he's fascinated by people who can just deal with suffering. I wouldn't go that far, but discomfort, yeah. I mean, it's like all great things come with some level of discomfort. Like waiting patiently for something is uncomfortable, but it can bring you something great. Or knowing what not to do, or to lifestyle habits that might negatively impact my performance in sport. I don't get to go out with my friends and do X, Y, and Z. It's uncomfortable because I want to be good at sport. And speaking of Aaron Wellman, he had a really good just quote he used to tell our players at Indiana, which was, "This isn't normal. If you want to be great at sport, it's not normal. It's literally not normal, because normal is comfortable. Normal is just, I don't feel like doing this. I'm not going to do it. I just kind of want to do what I want to do. I don't want to sacrifice anything for anybody. It's all about me." Like that's normal for us. All of us are that person to some degree when we think about our insides, and so to override the natural human tendencies, and like Nick Saban has always said it at Alabama, like his whole coaching career is just like, you have to override these natural human tendencies to be lazy, to not pay attention, to be just comfortable all the time. And if you can override those things, that's not normal. And that's how you separate yourself from the people that are normal, So it's just an interesting way to think about it.
Yes, sir. Cam, you smashed this, mate.
Bro, this was awesome.
This was great.
This is a great pod. We need to do this again.
Yeah, I forgot that we were recording at one point. Like, it was just so organic and just catching up with you guys, and it's been a blast. Like, I wish I didn't have to start training camp tonight, because I could talk for another 5 hours, but unfortunately, duty calls.
Dude,
sure.
thank
So
you
what's
so
on
much
this,
for
what's
coming
on the
on.
plan tonight? What are you doing with the boys tonight?
Tonight it's pretty easy. They're just picking up dinner. We got a team meeting, setting the foundation of what we're trying to get done, at least from a team morale standpoint. A couple of meetings, and then tomorrow we start our first practice. So bright and early.
Cool. Well, best of luck,
So-
buddy. Super nice
so
to catch
Cam,
up, Cam.
Do you have any projects coming up that you want people to follow? What do you have going on in your life that people listening can like latch onto and like, hey, I want to know what Cam's doing, or I want to follow Cam. Anything going on?
Yeah. The biggest thing really is just trying to get through my damn PhD. It's freaking. I don't know why I did this to myself, but it's in the works, and I'm really hoping our first paper is going to be out soon. And it's all based on sprint performance in American football, and just trying to add to the existing literature surrounding that, because it's relatively scarce, specifically in the context of American football. So just trying to add more from that standpoint. Other than that, like no books or anything like that coming out, no articles really that I have planned. But anything that I am doing or interested in or putting out would be put on my X account. I finally started calling it X. So my handle name is @Coach Josse, Coach Josse, and that's my account on there. So I don't have Instagram, don't have Facebook, anything. I've only got that. And then certainly my email is on the Auburn University website if somebody wants to reach out there and just talk about training. And I'm not the best at responding to emails. I need to start saying that more publicly, because I'm the worst. But I'm trying to get better at it. I really am trying to get better at it. And but other than that, it's all about supporting Auburn football. And so if Auburn football is doing well, I'm doing my job to some degree. So that's and if they're not, don't blame me for it.
I love it. Dude, Cam, thank you so much for coming on, bro. It's way too long overdue to have your ass on this podcast. It was fucking great, bro. I really appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, I loved it. Really good catching up with you guys. Thanks so much.
Yes, Cam.
Right on, brother.